Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Canadian Shield, your source for trusted analysis. My name is Sterling, and I'm your host. Got a few stories in this episode. We're going to talk about I'm going to assume, based on what the Liberals say, a farmer who was arrested with 200 rifles. We're going to talk about how the federal government, in their love for workers, has broken the contract that they made with the unions in Ottawa and forcing them to go back to work for an extra day. China, as I told you would probably happen, has made a complaint to the World Trade Organization, and I'm afraid that they may have something in their argument that would be accurate. I'll get into that. And of course, as I mentioned before, when Jagmeet Singh made his announcement, that just means that the Bloc Quebecois will have an opportunity to hold up and prop up the Liberal government, which they have come out and basically said they're willing to do if they can get some things for themselves. That's how much these guys care about Canadians. Before I get into it, I would encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I am up against a ton of censorship, so any thumbs up that you want to give me convinces the algorithm that other people want to watch it. All right, so first we'll report on another massive gun seizure. Waterloo Regional Police have seized over 200 firearms as part of a weapons investigation that began in Waterloo. According to police, during a traffic stop, officers noticed firearms and ammunition inside the vehicle. The driver, a 39-year-old man from Guelph, was arrested and charged with careless use of a firearm, transportation of a firearm or restricted weapon. 17 firearms were found in the vehicle. I mean, if you had an armored vehicle filled with SWAT teams, I'm not sure they would have 17 weapons. So that seems like a person who's, a little bit, it might be just a little bit too many. That's my opinion on that. Then they went ahead and got a search warrant for his place. Investigators seized 156 improperly stored firearms and an additional 60 firearms under public safety provisions of the Criminal Code. A large quantity of ammunition, magazines, and firearms were also seized. Firearm parts were also seized. Additional firearm storage and handling charges are pending, police said. So what I like about this entire thing is that he's not charged with, except for the some of them having a restricted, and the 60 firearms under public safety provisions that they can only seize because they are undoubtedly handguns, right? Based on the laws of the new Liberal government. Now, why this fella, there's only one reason this fella got 200 guns kicking around. He is obviously, in the business of this is his job. This is how he makes his funds. This is how he makes his money. And I don't know, for all I know, he used to own a store, and that store collapsed when the Liberal government imposed those new gun restrictions, which they promised they would buy back. But apparently that check is still en route because that fella didn't get his money. I mean, I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt. I don't really know. What I would like to point out is, in nowhere in this article do they mention what kind of farmer he is and why this farmer would have all of these restrictions, because clearly, based on what the Liberal government tells us, this man is obviously a licensed gun owner who clearly was driving around with 17 weapons because of his angst with potato farming. Unbelievable. On Monday, the public servants will begin to go back to the office 3 days a week in Ottawa. You'll remember last year when they went on strike and they got a new deal negotiated with the Liberal Party, as they've been working for years without a valid or an updated contract. And further, you'll remember the amount of paychecks that were sent out. The big money was paid out, like that was in retroactively for the negotiation of the contract. And one of the things they negotiated was only going into the office 2 days a week. Of course, they had already tons of experience at work at doing their job from home because of the lockdown. So everybody would have had plenty of examples to show how they can and cannot function. Then the mayor of Ottawa came forward and said, we're losing money. We're hemorrhaging. Nobody's riding our bus system. And if you don't put the federal workers back on the bus, then we need all kinds of money coming out of from the government to keep our transit system running. So the Liberal government said, the Liberal government, who claims to be the friend of the union, friend of the employee, friend of the worker, reneged on their negotiation and forced them to go back to work for 3 days a week. Now you might think to yourself, well, it's only one extra day. However, that will now encourage all of them to buy monthly bus passes. So they're putting them back to work so that they will buy bus passes. And then the French side, the Gatineau side, is saying, well, we need a year to plan out these bus routes, which makes no sense to me. But so now you're going to overload our bus routes first thing in the morning. I want to point out that the Liberal government talks a big talk, and then when the push comes to shove, when the chips are down, they will just completely turn back on everything that they have to say. And I mean, anybody who is paying attention closely understands that that's the way they've been doing things, even towards Canadians from the very beginning. Do I believe that the workers should be allowed to stay home, or I don't think that they should be having sensitive information in their house, and I worry about that. I worry about sensitive information being intercepted in the lines between people's houses and the servers or the mainframes, wherever they have them. But the deal was made. And so when you make the deal, you got to stick to the deal. And to do so in an effort to save a bus line that can't look after itself in a time where a federal government is screaming public transit, public transit, public transit, doesn't indicate to me that anybody is managing this system very well. Now, how will this affect you and I? I don't think it will. I think that if you call the government during the lockdown, or if you call the government right now, your response times are going to be about the same. Your rules of how you talk to them are going to be about the same. The information that they have at their fingertips is going to be about the same. So I'm not sure that it will affect the quality or anything like that. Like I say, the only thing I worry about is, these keyboard geniuses figuring out how to get in there and do whatever it is they do. The federal government is always talking about how they're going to make these green transitions, and they're going to make wonderful bus systems, and everybody's going to have no parking spaces and all of this stuff. And they can't even manage a bus system in the federal capital of Ottawa. Just seems a little bit inconsistent to me. You'll remember that the Trudeau government put a tariff on Chinese EVs coming into Canada. And he did so under a great amount of pressure. And of course, he only did it half-heartedly. He didn't add in all of the other materials that go inside of the battery. He just did it basically on the overall battery and some of the steel and some of the aluminum. Well, the Chinese have filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization. China makes a request to the WTO, the World Trade Organization, in a dispute over Canadian EV and steel tariffs. Beijing accuses Ottawa of violating the World Trade Organization rules with its tariffs. China has submitted a request to Canada for consultation at the WTO on additional tariffs it has imposed on Chinese electric vehicles as well as steel and aluminum products, the Commerce Ministry said on Friday. On the 6th of September, China lodged a request for consultation with Canada at the WTO regarding Canada's additional tariffs on electric vehicles and steel aluminum products in a statement said from the ministry. Canada has disregarded WTO rules and violated its commitment within the WTO by proposing to impose additional tariffs of 100% and 25%. China urges Canada to abide by the rules and immediately correct the wrongdoing. First of all, I don't really care what China wants. If it doesn't help Canada, then I don't care where it's coming from. I don't care if it's what country it arrives here from. I don't care. Canada first. So here's some of the things that you might not be aware of. Tesla makes a lot of cars in China, brings them in Vancouver, then gets them across the border into the United States of America because they're coming from Canada, like Ford, GM, like a lot of the cars that are manufactured in Canada. Automotives come under a special thing, and they're made in Canada and shipped down into the United States. And Tesla is sort of loopholing that, and I don't blame them. I mean, you would too if it was your business, if it's saving you all kinds of money. However, one of the responses from China is to lodge a complaint over the canola. Now, in the canola that's grown out west, apparently like 70% of it is sold to the Asian market, and much of it into China itself. I don't know necessarily why. I guess they cook with canola. Now, first of all, let's just establish that there's other markets for canola. I mean, this is a product that has been around since the beginning of humanity. There's always going to be people willing to buy it. They might not have those established contracts currently, and they might not have the tariffs in place. However, us having said all that, China is trying to retaliate with the WTO by saying, oh no, these products are subsidized. and we want an investigation. Now we see a problem because Justin Trudeau and Stephen Guilbeault have put a carbon tax. Then they say, oh, we will give you a break on the carbon tax. We will give you a 70% discount or an 80% discount on this tax. So now, when you take that and put it in front of the WTO, you can say, in all honesty, they get a tax break from the federal government. This food, this canola is subsidized. And I come back to it. This Liberal government acts like a bunch of people who have never been out into the real world. They sit there and they dream about what diplomacy looks like. They don't understand it in any way, shape, or form. They don't understand the individuals that they might be coming up against. They underestimate everybody completely. They think the whole world is standing in a circle going kumbaya. They are not capable or qualified to be looking after Canadians. Never mind dealing with the amount of adversaries that this country has. Many of you will remember when Jagmeet Singh made his announcement, the one thing that I said is not to get your hopes up and don't get excited because there's still the Bloc Quebecois. Now, from an analysis, like from a neutral third party, any support that the Bloc gives the Liberal Party is foolish. But they have come out and said that this is a great opportunity for them to squeeze things out of the federal government in an effort or in exchange for giving them support. Not only has the leader of the party come out and said it, the House leader has come out and said it. The Bloc Quebecois lays out its list of demands to keep the Liberals in power. The Bloc wants more money for seniors and more power for immigration. That's essentially what the article says. I have read it. I think that if you're not familiar with Quebec, you have to appreciate that they already have an enormous amount of power when it comes to immigration. They get first pick. They get first pick on every person that applies to come to the country. They give all of their onus and preferences to people who come from French countries. That's why the problem with Mexico is not because they're from Mexico, it's because they don't speak French. Honestly, if you've never lived there, then you wouldn't understand. If you live there, then you know exactly what I mean. It's because they're putting Spanish speakers into the region, or people who don't necessarily want to switch from one language to speaking French. They're speaking Spanish, and then they're trying to learn English. Most of the French people that live in Quebec speak English try to learn English anyway. But that is an entire series of videos. This French language war that goes on behind the scenes that nobody covers because, they're worried about offending the voter. And the Liberal Party requires a lot of Quebec votes to have any seats in the House of Commons. The Bloc, however, doesn't care what you and I are going through, and they've said it themselves. They're like, well, we want more money for seniors. They want to give a larger pension to people over 65, from 65 to 74. And now they want even absolutely more control over immigration. They don't want anybody who's not got their express permission to come into their province, which is funny when you consider that Roxham Road is in Quebec. And they could have just turned them away right there and then. But they didn't. So now we have what I warned you about, right? So now Jagmeet can say, oh, no, I'm ready to support it all I want. And the Bloc will now prop up the Liberal Party because the Bloc feels that if the Conservatives get a majority, then they won't have any ability to manipulate or gain any leverage. Now, I don't know about immigration, but I'm pretty certain that the Conservatives have no problem giving a larger pension. There's billions of dollars on the table that the Liberals can save, and giving it to people who have to pay more money seems like a good idea, right? Because that's the problem, right? Once you're on a pension, your income is fixed, and now the bills are going up and up and up and up and up. Well, the income is not going up and up and up and up and up to go alongside of it. So I really feel like there's room to play there. There's room to work. There's room to negotiate. Now, I don't necessarily agree with Quebec's policy on immigration. I think that they are struggling to hold on to a system that is antiquated. They've always had this concern about speaking French all the way back to the 1700s. When they negotiated with the English, they negotiated two things: the right to speak French and the right to remain Catholic. Again, series of videos. What I want you and I to hear is how they don't care what we're going through. They don't care the amount of money that we're spending. They don't care about all the rent evictions. They don't care. They're not willing to put a stop to it so that they can gain a few votes in a couple of liberal ridings. However, if you're already going through a lot of problems in Quebec and you're not a senior and you don't really have or not impacted by immigration, then you are also feeling the pinch from the liberal policies. So the Bloc, telling themselves that they can get this little segment of a vote, really should be propping up, should be going for the no confidence vote so that they can say to all the people in the province of Quebec, hey, look, we pushed these horrible, mean people out. Vote for us and we're going to make your life better. The Verdun vote will be interesting to look at. Apparently, even the Conservatives have a shot in that region, according to all the polling that's going on. I don't think anybody's willing to admit who they're voting for right now when it comes to certain regions of this city, especially these two by-elections. However, this country, especially these two by-elections. But I'm really grumpy. I'm really I don't want to, my policy on not swearing, but I assure you, this makes me a little bit cross. Because they're playing with people's lives, a small group of 36 people, deciding how the 40 million of us are going through, so that they can have a little bit more control over immigration, so that they can say we're not allowing any temporary foreign workers. Well, the Conservatives already decided that they're going to have a problem with temporary foreign workers and that we're going to get these things balanced. And we see the near 7% unemployment rate. So there's all kinds of reasons that you're going to get what you want without saying a thing. But they don't really seem to care. We'll see what happens. It's all tentative and in typical politician, they're probably bouncing ideas all over the place. This entire release might have just been to see if they can get the temperature of the country. I, however, would caution us all to not get our hopes up. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you all for listening. I'll talk to you next time.